Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Muhammad Bilal from Saudi Arabia. I request you to kindly give a brief description on the life history of Sheikh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, alias Banke Lal, Rahimullah, a revert from Uttar Pradesh state of India, who recently passed away in Madeenah al-Munawwarah. Inshallah, this story might provide inspiration to many of our Muslim brothers, and God willing might also serve as an eye-opener to many Hindu brothers. Jazakallahu khairan. Last month, the Muslim Ummah lost an important personality, Sheikh Professor Dr. Mohammed Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi. On the 30th of July 2020, on the Yawm al-Arafah, on the 9th Zil Hijjah, during the Zohar Azan, Sheikh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi was very close to me, and he was one of the first few teachers of mine as far as teachers in the Islamic deen is concerned. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may He grant him Jannat al-Firdaus al-Ala in the company of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sheikh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, he was the dean of the faculty of Hadith in the Islamic University of Madeenah. And he was also a lecturer in the Prophet's Mosque, that Masjid al-Nabawi in Madeenah. Who would have imagined that the person who was the dean of the faculty in the famous Islamic University of Madeenah and also a lecturer at the Prophet's Mosque, Masjid al-Nabawi, was born in a Hindu family in 1943, about 76 years ago, in the village of Bilaria Ganj, in Azamgarh, in the state of UP, in India. Imagine a person who was born in Uttar Pradesh, one of the most communally charged states in India, where the Muslim minority, they are harassed and persecuted. From there, where he was born, Allah transformed him, and a person who spent most of his life in the most peaceful city in the world, that is Madeenah Munawwarah. And Alhamdulillah, he died on one of the best days of the year, that is Yawm al-Arafah, during the Azan of Dhuhr time. Alhamdulillah, what a journey. Sheikh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, his name was Banke Lal, and he was born in a Hindu family, and at the age of 16, he was inspired by the teachings of Islam. Mainly, he was inspired by the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the message of Tawheed in the religion of Islam. And at the age of 16, he reverted to Islam. After he accepted Islam, his life was in danger in the state of UP. He was forced to migrate to do hijrah to the state of Tamil Nadu. And in Tamil Nadu, he studied Arabic and Islamic studies in Jamia Darus Salam in Umrabad in Tamil Nadu. And after he completed his course of Arabic and Islamic studies, after 6 years, he was accepted as a student for the bachelor's degree in the famous Islamic University of Madeenah. Alhamdulillah, he was the first Muslim who was a Hindu revert who was accepted as a student in the Islamic University of Madeenah. And after he finished his bachelor's degree in the Islamic University of Madeenah, he went to Mecca and he enrolled himself in the King Abdulaziz University in Mecca, and he finished his master's degree. And later on, this university is now called as the Ummul Qura University in Mecca. And from Mecca later on, he went to Cairo, Egypt, and he did his PhD in Al-Azhar University in Cairo, in Egypt. And after he finished his PhD, he came back to Saudi Arabia, and Alhamdulillah, he was appointed as a professor in the faculty of Hadith in the Islamic University of Madeenah. And later on, he took various posts of administration, of teaching in various institutes, including the Muslim World League, the Rabta Alam al-Islamiyya in Makkah. Later on, he was again appointed as the Dean of the Faculty of Hadith in the Islamic University of Madeenah, where he retired. And simultaneously, he was also a Khatib, a lecturer in the Prophet's Mosque in Masjid al-Nabawi in Madeenah. Imagine what a journey from one of the worst states of India to one of the most peaceful cities in the world. And Alhamdulillah, Sheikh Muhammad Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, he has authored dozens of books in Arabic. He also authored a book in Hindi, the Encyclopedia of the Quran. And he also wrote his autobiography in Urdu, titled From Ganga to Zamzam. But his main and the most famous work, I'll come to it inshallah later on. The first time I met Sheikh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi was in 1997 when I went to Madeenah to study Arabic as a language. Before that, 1 year before that, in 1996, I went to Makkah and I studied for 1 month under Professor Dr. Nadwi, who was a teacher of Arabic language, a professor of Arabic language in the Umar University. Since I had Umrah visa, I could not stay for more than 30 days. Then later on, I tried to find out that who is the best Arabic teacher in the world who can teach to non-Arabs. And I got the reply, it was Dr. Fa Abdurrahim. And he was the head of the Lugha department, the Arabic language department in the Islamic University of Madeenah. And people told me he's a very busy person and he mainly takes students of the PhD. So I doubt whether you'll be able to meet him or whether he'll give you time. But I said, what's the harm in trying? So I went to Madeenah and I met Dr. Fa Abdurrahim and I told him that I'm a Dai in this field of Islam and I would like to learn Arabic. So he told me, do you know that we gave a talk a few weeks before in Madeenah? I said, yes. I was sitting on the first row for your talk. And then I happened to know that, mashallah, he attended my lecture and he was very much willing to give me time. So much so that he told me that if you spend about 6 months with me, inshallah, you will know Arabic as a language. And he promised to give me more than 5 hours every day, after Zohar till just before Maghrib, every day. Alhamdulillah. And that's the time I took out my Aqama, my resident permit of Saudi Arabia, so that I could spend 6 months in Madeenah. That's in the year 1997. But unfortunately, I hardly spent 1 month, maybe a few days less than a month, where I spent 5 hours every day with Dr. Fa Abdurrahim. And when I went to his house, I realized that he was the close friend of Professor Dr. Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi. And not only a close friend, he was also a tenant. In the villa that he lived on the ground floor, and on the first floor was the owner of the villa, that is Professor Dr. Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi. And that's the time I met him, and I also became very close to Professor Dr. Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi. And when I requested him that can he give me time, so he agreed to give me twice a week, few hours every session, twice a week. And with him also, mashallah, I studied for about a month. And my basics of my Hadith, I acquired my knowledge from Dr. Professor Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi. And in the passage of time, I became very close to him. And when I was studying under him, I asked him the question that whenever I say in my lecture that Muslims should follow Quran and Sahih Hadith, Quran and Sahih Hadith, do we have all the Sahih Hadith compiled together? And the answer, but naturally, was no. Yes, there are many books of Sahih Hadith. We have Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, then we have the Kutub al-Sitta, etc. But we don't have all the Sahih Hadith compiled together. The best work that was done at that time was by Shaykh Al-Albani. Besides the two Sahihain, Bukhari and Muslim, the remaining 4 books of the Kutub al-Sitta, that is Sunan Abu Dawud, Sunan Nisai, Tirmidhi, and Ibn Majah, Shaykh Al-Albani, he bifurcated into Sahih and Zaif. So you have the Silsila Sahih, which has compilation of all the Sahih Hadith in the balanced 4 books of the Kutub al-Sittah. But to say that all the Sahih Hadith were compiled, many of the people tried in the past, but no one completed the project. So while discussing with Shaikh Professor Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, this was the time that maybe the seed was sown. And after he retired, alhamdulillah, he spent about 15 to 18 years in this project, and he compiled all the Sahih Hadith together. And according to Professor Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, he told me that there are about more than 1 million hadith that is there. If you remove all the duplicates, many hadiths are duplicate, the matter is the same. The chain of narrators are different, or maybe the matan, the matter differs very slightly. So if you remove the duplicate hadith, different chains, but the matter being the same, he told me there are approximately 60,000 hadith. From the 60,000 hadith, he told me at that time, approximately 16,000 will be Sahih. And after he retired, alhamdulillah, he took this voluminous project to compile all the Sahih Hadith of all the books, not only the Kutub al-Sittah, but all the other books of Hadith, and get them together and remove the duplicates so that anyone who reads this book can say that he has read all the Sahih Hadith. And he told me that to the best ability, he finished this project, maybe I think about 4 years back. And that was the first edition that was printed. In the manuscript form, it was in 20 volumes. And this work was given to Dar es Salaam for printing. And they printed this book, which Shaykh Ziaur Rahmaan called it as Jame Kamil. The full name is Al-Jame Al-Kamil Fil Hadith As-Sahih Al-Shamil. This is the complete name. Short form is Jame Kamil, we say. But the full name is Al-Jame Al-Kamil Fil Hadith As-Sahih Al-Shamil. This is the complete name. And it was printed in 12 volumes by Dar es Salaam, the Arabic. And it contained about 16,500 hadith. All the duplicates removed, and it gave the chain of narrators. It also gave the hujjah, why this hadith is sahih or why this hadith is zaif, and didn't include it into the main list. And he had his own criteria. Every scholar, besides the basic criteria that is there of the sahih hadith, they have their own way of analyzing, and they may agree with most of the scholars, they may differ sometimes. So he gave his reasoning why he differed when some scholars say it is sahih, and according to him it wasn't sahih, it was zaif. He gave his reasoning, or some scholars said zaif and he said it is hasan. So the takhrij is also there. So all this put together, the chain of narrators with the takhrij, it was approximately 16,500 hadith. And he added another 3,000 hadith to it. Those hadith which were very commonly known. It may be zaif, it may be mawdu, so people should not say that he skipped it. And even those hadith which were said to be sahih by famous muhaddithin, but he considered it as zaif, he even mentioned that, and that was another 3,000 hadith. So that no one could say that he missed. And I could say that alhamdulillah, if not 100%, we can safely say that more than 95% of all the Sahih Hadith that is available has been compiled in this Al-Jami Kamil. Alhamdulillah, it was a voluminous work. And later on, in the next 2 or 3 years, he spent in revising that. And recently, mashallah, just a few months back, the second revised edition has been printed of this Al-Jami Al-Kamil in Pakistan. But this time, the lettering is a little bit bigger, so it is 19 volumes. And alhamdulillah, I requested him that why doesn't he make a condensed version, a mukhtasar Al-Jami Kamil, so that it can be translated. Because the main book is good for scholars and for researchers, but for normal layman, they are not so much bothered about the takhrij, they are more bothered about the hadith. So he agreed, and he also made a mukhtasar Jami Kamil in 5 volumes, which doesn't have the takhrij, which only has the sanad of the hadith and the hadith number. He may say this hadith is also there in Sahih Bukhari, Hadith number so and so, also there in Sahih Muslim, Hadith number so and so, also in Abu Dawud, Hadith number so and so. So at the end of the Hadith, he even gave the references where it's present. And the same Hadith may be present in 3 books or in 4 books or in 5 books, many a times more than that, so that no one can say that these Hadith have been missed. So in the Mukhtasar, the Takhrij is missing, but the complete Sanad is there. And Alhamdulillah, even this Mukhtasar is complete, and it's under the process of translation. And I took the onus of having it translated into English. And this project we started about 4.5 years back, after the first edition was completed, along with the Mukhtasar. And we gave it to someone who was expert in Arabic and English. And the project was for 3 years. But unfortunately, when the translation was completed, I had it checked with some other expert and I wasn't happy with the English translation, so we are re-revising it. And so far we have completed the first volume and part of the second volume. I think it will take another 1 or 2 years because I believe that the translation should be good. Unfortunately, the English translation of most of the books of Hadith is not up to the standard. Most of them are poor, some are fair, some may be good, but not of excellent quality. So inshallah, we expect to complete the translation of the Mukhtasar Jami Kamil, inshallah, in the next 2 years, and we'll have it printed into English. I also requested Prophet Sh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi to have the full Jami Kamil only in 1 volume without the Sanad, which he disagreed. He said, we as Muhaddithin, we don't believe a Hadith can be without Sanad. I said, let's be practical. If you want to give it to the layman or maybe a student of knowledge, to make it more compact, so that only write the name of the Sahaba who narrated it without the Sanad. So finally, after many years, he agreed, and he had just started with the project of making it into 1 volume, so that it is more condensed and easier for the layman or the common Muslim to read. Unfortunately, he could not complete that 1 volume. I'm in touch with some of my common friends and with the children of Prophet Sh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, and inshallah we'll try and make this Jami Kamil into 1 volume, so that we only have the main Hadith with the name of the Sahaba, so that the Hadith becomes much shorter and easier for a common man to read. And if we read this, we can at least say that we have read the Quran and we have read almost all the Sahih Hadith. So if it's in 5 volume now, Mukhtasar Jami Kamil, it may be in 1 volume later on. It's possible for most of the Muslims to read if they want to read. But reading all the books of Hadith is extremely difficult or next to impossible for a common man. Inshallah, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may this 1 volume of Jami Kamil also come into existence very soon. But at present, we have the Mukhtasar Jami al-Kamil, and alhamdulillah, by Allah's grace, Prophet Sh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, he gave an authority to me. He gave a letter to me saying that I have the right to translate his complete Al-Jami, Al-Kamil, Fil Hadith, Al-Saheeh, Al-Shamil into any language what I want. And he gave me permission even for the Mukhtasar Jami Kamil to be translated. And alhamdulillah, he gave me 20 blank letters that I can give permission to any publisher to publish his original Arabic version of the Jami al-Kamil. But natural, I don't intend selling this to anyone, but natural for the benefit of the Ummah to spread the message of the great work done by Dr. Sh Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this work that he did, it is really voluminous. Many people in the last 1400 years tried, but they could not complete it. Allah blessed him, alhamdulillah, that after he retired, he spent, along with the revision, spent approximately 20 years compiling the Hadith, doing his Takhrij. He had a couple of 2-3 of the PhDs who helped him in this project, but he did it single-handedly, alhamdulillah. He didn't want any other scholar or any other person to interfere. There were some students of PhD or some who passed PhD did help him in copying, that's it. But he himself wanted to do it individually. And alhamdulillah blessed him and he completed the project. Though this book is not that famous, I'm waiting for the English translation to be completed, and inshallah then we will market it better so that the whole Muslim Ummah can benefit from one of the greatest works done by late Shaykh, Professor, Dr. Muhammad Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi, Rahimullah. May Allah have mercy on him. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may he grant Jannat al-Firdaus al-Ala to Shaykh Muhammad Ziaur Rahmaan Azmi.